All right, hello again and welcome back. This is our fourth tutorial in our series of Intro to SolidWorks. And we're here and we're taking a look at this sketch that we just drew. And we're trying to get our way through the Sketch tab up here in our Command Manager. And we used quite a few tools in our last exercise. We were able to create this sketch. We initially started out, if you remember, with a long rectangle, which we then overlaid with the line tool, drawing out this sort of lightning bolt shaped line. And then we used our Trim Entities tool to trim away the parts of the rectangle we didn't want. And we added this center line using the second part of the line tool. That's our first sort of indication of reference geometry in SolidWorks. And then we activated the Mirror Entities tool to mirror this side of the sketch across our center line to create this side of our sketch, completing the full arrow. Now we'll just look normal 2 at this sketch one last time. And we are going to edit the sketch to activate it so that we can see some of the constraints. And we'll talk about these constraints again. What we talked about before was that this center line, because it was the thing that activated our Mirror Entities tool, it contains all of the constraints for this mirror operation. So if we delete it, well, first we'll look at these constraints. We have these constraints here, which looks like a square with a little slash through it. That's a symmetrical point constraint, and that's the thing that holds this side of the sketch to this side of the sketch. So if you get in here and you drag one side of it, these constraints will hold either side of the sketch together so that it stays symmetrical. When you move one side, you get the same effect on the other side. Okay? And all of those symmetrical constraints are held together by this center line, because that center line was what defined the mirror operation. If I delete that center line, all of those constraints go away, and then when I go to drag one side of the sketch, it doesn't affect the other side, because the thing that holds all those constraints together is now gone. So I'll just do an undo. That's just going to be Control Z, and I'll do another undo to get our center line back to where it was. Okay, that's just a bit of a recap on what we've already done. Now, I want to continue going through all of the different tools that are up here in the Sketch tab of our Command Manager, and there's quite a few that we haven't touched on yet, but we did get through some of the key ones. And some of the other ones are a little bit more specific, things like offset entities and linear sketch pattern is some of the tools I want to cover definitely later on. But those can be a little bit complicated, and they don't show up until you have some stuff kind of down on paper, until you have some actual 3D models going. So I don't think we're going to go over that right now. So let me just exit out of this sketch, get back into our main part of our document, and I'm going to do a right click and just get us back into 3D. And I think what we'll do now is we'll switch from the Sketch tab over to the Features tab, and we'll just get right into it. Let's go ahead here and apply a feature to our 2D sketch and see what happens. The first one that is in the Features tab is Extruded Boss Base. And I'll click on that, and SolidWorks is super nice as usual and has decided to give us a little indication of how to use the tool in case we don't know. And so it says, hey, please select a plane on which to sketch the feature cross-section, or select an existing sketch to use for the feature. Now we do have an existing sketch, so we'll just go ahead and click on that. And you see what happens? It throws the 2D sketch into 3D space, projecting it up any height that we want. It comes with this nice little arrow in the middle, which you can just drag to any height that you want, and it gives you this nice little ghosted ruler in the center here in case you just want to drag it out to a certain height. You can drag it up or down to whatever height you want. Let's see if I can get it to go right on 1 inch high. And there we go. So the other thing that happens when we activate this feature is that it switches us again from the design tree over to the property manager for that feature. And it tells us, this property manager is telling us all sorts of information about the feature. First of all, it's telling us where does this extrusion start from, and that's the sketch plane. If you take a look inside here, we started at the top plane, and the extrusion goes up from the top plane. So it's starting at this sketch plane. It tells us the direction it's going is blind, which we can talk about more. It just basically means that it doesn't have any defined depth or height to it. It will extrude as far as we ask it to. And then this box right here tells us the height of the extrusion. And since we pulled this arrow up to 1 on the ruler, it is now 1 inch high. We could just as easily change this to 2, and it would extrude it straight up to 2. And we could just put any dimension we want in here. Let's just switch it back to 1 because that's easy and it looks nice. This area down here is for draft. If we wanted to add draft to this item, we could. Click on draft right there and just hit this little arrow button to add a bunch of draft. And as you see, those sides will suck right in to add draft. And draft, if you don't know, is something that is absolutely necessary if you're going to be having your parts mass produced. So we'll talk about that more as your career in industrial design begins to blossom. So I'll just delete that and turn that draft off. There's also things like direction 2 and thin feature, which are other things that are a little bit more complicated. You got a little sneak preview there. We'll talk about those in more detail also. But for now, let's just be happy with what we've done. We've transformed this 2D sketch into a 3D object, and we're going to go ahead and just hit the green checkbox to confirm with SolidWorks that we like that operation. And there we go. Now, we notice a couple of things. First, we notice that this thing is shaded. Other programs, Rhino, Alias, your model isn't shaded unless you ask it to. So this is okay. It's just unique to SolidWorks. SolidWorks always shades its 3D objects. If you go up here to the heads up display, you can change that here in the display style. So if we do a drop down on this display style button, we see that right now we have it set to shaded with edges. We could just as easily change it to shaded and it would take away those edges. We could also change it to a wireframe, which would look like that. And we could also change it to a wireframe with interior hidden lines visible, which would look like that. And we could change it finally to a standard wireframe that would look like that. Because we're in SolidWorks, we're going to keep it looking like this. We're going to keep it stock. We're going to keep it simple. And we're going to look over at our design tree. And what we notice is that where our sketch used to be is now different. It now says Boss Extrude number 1. This is the feature that we added was Boss Extrude, and it has updated our design tree with that feature. And so you might be thinking, well, what happened to the sketch that I used to make that? Because we want to edit the sketch in order to change the shape of the feature. Well, all you have to do is go over here and look at this little plus box and open that up, and you'll see that the original sketch that we used is still, it's just buried right within the feature. Okay? So now that we know where our sketch is, we can go back in and we could edit it. We can go here to our sketch, we could do a right click and we could go edit sketch, and the feature disappears and our sketch is totally editable, just like that if we wanted. And we can just go ahead and confirm that we like that and say exit sketch, and it has updated our shape. Obviously we don't like that because it's ugly, so let's go back and edit it again, and we're going to edit the sketch again and just bring it back so that it actually looks like an arrow. There we go. Good. So we're going to edit that, and we're going to exit the sketch, and it's going to update our extrusion. Okay, so there we go. Now we can go ahead and close that up if we want. Now, so earlier we extruded this 1 inch up. Now let's say we want to change that. We've gotten a call from our client who's hired us, I guess, to do this arrow, and they say, I don't like that 1 inch depth. I want that thing to be thin. I want it to be ½ an inch. And you say, no problem, boss. Here we go. We'll go right over here. We'll do a right click on the feature. We'll go edit feature. It brings up that same property manager dialog box that we had open before. And here is the 1 inch depth that we added before. We could just change that to 0.5 and hit enter, and it drops it right down to 0.5. And then we'll hit the green checkbox to confirm we like that change, and we are good to go. And it's just that easy, guys. So now we took our sketch. We took this sketch, we added this feature to it, and SolidWorks, as I said it would, has added a record of everything that we've done into our design tree, of which we will dig into to change around everything about that sketch and that feature. Okay, so are we having fun yet? This is what it's all about. Let's jump right ahead to one of the very fun features of SolidWorks, which is the fillet. Okay, here's our fillet tool, and as you see, similar to our Trim Entities tool from the Sketch tab. Once you open this fillet tab, you realize there's several different tools buried within it. There's a constant radius fillet, there's a variable radius fillet, a face fillet, and a full round fillet. And we'll go over each one of these fillets in detail, I promise, coming up. But for now, we'll just stick with constant radius fillet, which is, I guess, the easiest one to use, which is just where we're going to add one size fillet to one face or one edge, okay? And we look down here and it shows us the radius of the fillet that we're going to add, and we don't have any real dimensions called out in our arrow right now besides the height, which is 0.5. So let's just add a couple of fillets to this and see how 0.1 looks. So I'll just go here and I'll just click on, let's just click on this little edge inside here and see what happens. So there's our 0.1 size fillet. Now that's a little teeny. Let's just bump it up a little bit. So I'll go here to this upwards arrow and click that. I think that one looks a little bit better. So I'll add one to that side and then I'll add one to this side. And then I'll just go ahead and hit OK. And there we go. It adds a nice fillet to us. Now that we've added those fillets, I want to go fillet crazy because it just looks pretty. So I'm going to go back into that fillet. I'm going to go edit feature. It's going to activate those first two fillets that we added. And I'm just going to add a couple more fillets. I'm just going to start selecting probably all of these edges. So I'll just go here, get that one. I'll get this one. I'll get this one. And there we go. This last one is there. And you see, I've been using my middle mouse button. I've flipped my whole model upside down and it's backwards and upside down. So I'll just do a right mouse button click up and to the right, and it spins us right back to where we started. Now they're all still active, and if I wanted to, I could shrink them down, or I could also bump them back up too, to whatever I want. But I'm just going to keep them at 0.2 for now. And I'm going to look in here. I don't think we need to talk about anything else in there for now. So let's just go ahead and click the green checkbox and add those fillets to our part. And voila, there it is. Clean as a whistle. We've added fillets to all of our edges. And so now it's looking a lot less sharp. It's looking like a lot more friendly arrow pointing. So if this was going to point us in the right direction, it would do it in a very nice way. Alternatively, well, let's keep going with the fillet tool. I'm just going to click right back on it. And we're going to add a new fillet to the piece that we've got here. And it'll be another constant radius fillet. And I want to show you just one more thing. So before we were clicking on actual edges and we were adding fillets to the specific edges. Let's say I wanted to add a fillet that's going to go all the way around and hit this entire edge of this arrow here. In that case, I would just click this entire top face, and it's going to go ahead and it's going to add a fillet to the entire perimeter of that face. So watch me just click right there, and you see it just easy as can be, throws a fillet on the entire thing, and it's a nice clean fillet too. So I'm going to hit the green checkbox to confirm that I like that, and just for the heck of it, I'm going to add one to this side too, just because we're on the fillet game right now, and it feels good to add fillets in the world of 3D. If you guys are out there and you've been using Rhino or Alias, this would be a bit of a nightmare. You'd start to get nervous right about now, because to undo these fillets in any other NURBS-based program would be kind of a nightmare. Each one of these surfaces you'd have to then delete and then untrim, and then you'd have to then go back and retrim with all new surfaces, and the opportunity to fail and not be able to get back to where you started without starting from scratch would be really, really high. But with SolidWorks, it's super easy to remove these fillets. All you have to do, if you look now, we've got our boss extrude, and inside of that boss extrude is the sketch that we used to create our item. Okay, that's all still there. The fillets that we've added, first there was these fillets, then there's this fillet on the very top, and then there's this fillet on the bottom. Okay, and SolidWorks has individually added these three different operations to our design tree, and just as easily as we added them, we can delete them. So we can go over here to our fillet number 3, and we could just delete that, and it's going to just pop right back into place the way it was. And then with this top fillet that we added here, we can just do a right click and go down to delete and delete that. And then with this fillet here, we can go ahead and we can delete that one also, and our arrow pops right back into where it was when we started. And that was just easy as can be and ended up looking pretty cool too. So that's a little bit of adding features to 2D sketches and creating 3D stuff. And it's also a little sneak preview of adding features to features. And we got a little taste of how we use this design tree to our advantage when we're trying to design parts. And hopefully you're starting to get a concept of how easy this program can be at adding some pretty complicated features. Okay, so I'm going to shut this tutorial down right here, and we'll move on to the next thing where we're going to start exploring probably some of these other tools in here, because there is a whole lot of goodies hidden up here in the Features tab. And once we start to combine those things with what's in the Sketch tab, well, then we can start making some really cool stuff. So let's get to it, and I'll talk to you next time.